Hi, and welcome to this lecture of Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Art, also titled How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Keep Making Art. My name is Ross Pruden. This is my company, Pruden Fine Art, and this is a lecture that was delivered in Paulsbo at the Lightning Talks at Vibe Coworks in Paulsbo, Washington, last year, 2024. So to start, I just want to alert any DMCA trigger-happy algorithms that this video does fall under fair use. I am fully aware of all 4 requirements for fair use, and I think that it is an educational video, so I'm not trying to make money off of this. Most of the photographic work is mine. Anything that is copyrighted there's very little of it. There are 50 plus photographs. The ones that I do include are Creative Commons licensed images from Wikipedia, and I think that everyone would be very happy to be included. I'm trying to keep this video short, so I'm going to go pretty fast, but this is the basic question I'm trying to address. How can artists compete with AI? So before I get into that, let me give you a little bit of context. I have had my work in publications. This is from Gen Tough Gallery in Santa Fe. This is during the pandemic. They didn't have a gallery, but they did actually have a publication. I've had my work in cafes, hospitals. I've had work selected for statewide jury shows and garnered some honors. There I am on stage. And this one I'm really proud of. This one was purchased and then donated back to the old alcohol plant inn, which incidentally was owned by the father of Ansel Adams, one of my mentors. Aspirational mentors. I've given lectures about how to find your voice in photography, also why art works, art is magic, and I've done courses on photography. So I am running a Kickstarter campaign in spring of 2025, which is culminating all my knowledge into a course. So I'm pretty deeply steeped into photography. So throughout my whole life, I've been either in front of a camera or behind a camera. Those black and whites are actual print photography I've had in magazines. And in 2020, I opened up my own business. You can see my little coffee mug there on the lower left, which is a really fun thing that I decided to do. I'm going to come back to that. But this is the kind of work I do. I do fine art portraiture. I do landscape photography. And it is my very firm belief that empty walls are sad walls. I really believe that if you love something enough and you want to fill your life with it, you should put it on a wall. I'm also a writer and publisher. I published my own book of 100 short stories that are dedicated into the public domain, which is a whole other thing I can talk about. And then my daughter Zoe, she published her own book, and I helped her publish it. She wrote it, I published it. They're both on Amazon. And so now this leads us to the game that we're going to play. Is this art made by a real person or is it made by AI? What do you think? Is this made by a real person or AI? This was Zebrato by Michael Levin, one of my favorite pieces of monochromatic minimalist photography. I love this. I love the imagery. I love the style. It's just fantastic work. Real or fake? This also was Michael Levin. I mean, he just excels at this kind of art. He's so good. This is not quite as clear, but it turns out this is actually AI. And then if you've been paying attention, you would recognize this one already. This is mine. This one is pretty clear. I mean, it's clearly AI because there's no highway that goes off into the horizon quite like that. But this one is not quite so obvious. It could go either way. Turns out this actually is AI. But the fact is, I'd actually put that on my wall. I mean, it's pretty enough to hang on my wall. So again, it's no longer clear. Turns out this is AI. not totally clear, but this is also AI. This is Michael Levin. So hopefully you'll get to this point. I spoke to a gallery manager who started to seriously wonder about the future of photography. And he believes that in 5 years, photography as an art form will just cease to exist. So this leads me to what I consider 3 unavoidable truths. They are inconvenient, certainly. The first is that AI will soon be able to copy art perfectly. I think it's just a matter of time. The second is that there will certainly be some artists who will refuse to adapt to AI, and they will perish as a consequence. And then the third unavoidable truth is that artists can make money despite and perhaps even because of AI. And we'll come back to this here in a second. So I think that this might be a coming trend. I think that people are going to start to look at stuff that's made and think, oh, that's made by AI. That's kind of gross. Like, what, don't you want to pay an artist or someone at least that you know? I think that there's going to be a backlash against AI. Maybe that's wishful thinking, could be, but it's something to keep in mind. So let's talk about Jason Matias. He is an artist living in Tacoma, Washington. He runs a group called The Art of Selling Art, of which I am a member in full transparency. And he did this really interesting experiment where he took a limited edition of one of his photographic pieces. It had been sold out, and then he uploaded it to an AI platform and then started selling the AI pieces. I think that this is the model for artists rather than spurning AI. I think if they embrace AI and use it authentically, this is coming from me, he says. This is my work. I'm just creating it, a version of it through AI. So I think this is a good model going forward. So let's talk about how artists can truly compete with artificial intelligence. And I think really the question is, how can they compete with AI that copies art perfectly, quickly, and cheaply? That's really the question. It does it so well that how do you compete? And so that leads me to one of my favorite articles written by Mike Masnick, who runs the website TechDirt. This article, saying you can't compete with free is saying you can't compete, period, was written in 2007. This was at the height of video and music piracy. And people were wondering, gosh, with the internet, you can copy and redistribute everything. So how do you compete with that? What is the model? And so in this piece, he lays it out. He says, why do infinitely copyable movies still cost more than $0? Because there's additional value bundled with the movie itself. People don't buy a movie, they buy the experience of going to the theater. People buy the convenience of a DVD, which is another feature bundled with the movie. They like to buy or rent movies to get the more convenient delivery mechanism and the extra features that come with DVDs. In other words, they like the differentiated value that they can get from bundled goods and services that helps justify a price that's more than $0. This is incredibly insightful stuff. I think that a lot of people probably don't recognize that when you buy a book, you're not buying a story, you're buying a story that's bundled with a physical embodiment. That's a distinction that few people just really recognize. Kevin Kelly talks about this in Better Than Free, which was also published around the same time. And he was talking about, in an age where everything can be copied, what's valuable. When copies become super abundant, he said, they become worthless. When copies become super abundant, stuff which can't be copied then becomes scarce and valuable. When copies are free, you need to sell the things that cannot be copied. And so what's better than free? And his answer to this is something he called generatives. Now, generatives, in his words, are uncopyable values that have to be generated, grown, cultivated, or nurtured. They cannot be copied cloned, faked, replicated, counterfeited, or reproduced. These qualities add value to free digital copies. So these are things like immediacy and personalization, interpretation, patronage, embodiment. There are lots of things. He has a list of, I think, 8 things. Findability. These are the things which add value. And if you keep this in mind, then you start to have a better appreciation for how artists can compete with free moving forward. That leads me to another Mike Masnick piece. He delivered, I think this is actually how I first found out about Mike Masnick. He wrote this speech for the Mid-M conference in 2009, and he put this really cryptic acronym on the screen that said CwF plus RtB equals $signs. What does that mean? It means if you connect with fans and you give them a reason to buy, then you can have a profitable business model. Now there is an asterisk next to reason to buy because most people don't really understand what that means in the way that he's reframing it. So he explains it as something that has genuine scarcity. Think of like the generatives that Kevin Kelly is talking about. And you bundle it with something of value. That's usually the story. So, or the whatever the message of your art is. So the art plus something that's genuinely scarce, and the scarcity doesn't have to be physical. It can be a generative like immediacy, exclusivity, things like that. You bundle those together, those are good reasons to buy. And then if you really connect with your audience, you'll make money. And this aligns with Simon Sinek when in his TED Talk, which I strongly recommend you watch, I watch it at least once a year, he mentions that people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. Because the why is a connection. And I don't think that AI has that kind of connection by definition. It's an AI. Anybody could do it. So to resume to, to recap, artists are better off creating a meaningful and memorable artistic experience, connecting with fans in any way they can, and then bundling a genuine scarcity with value, and fans will happily buy. I think that is the secret sauce right there in 3 steps. So, how can artists compete with AI? They need to offer 3 things. They need to offer scarcity, which comes in the form of authenticity, personalization, exclusivity, interpretation, immediacy, patronage, embodiment, findability. There are lots of things that Kevin Kelly talks about, but these are truly the scarce elements that in an age where everything can be copied, these are the things that are truly scarce. They also need to offer experiences, and that comes in the form of limited editions, spoken performances, behind-the-scenes stuff. People love watching behind-the-scenes stuff. That is an experience that cannot be copied. The creation of art books. I love telling this story where Amanda Palmer on her crowdfunding campaign, after I pledged $1 to her campaign, I actually upgraded it immediately to $15 because I thought if I'm going to donate, I might as well donate. But I was a $15 backer for most of the campaign, but I watched her create an art book during the campaign and became so enamored with it that the experience of watching that made me have a stronger connection, and I immediately upgraded because it was a limited edition art book. $125 just by offering an art book behind the scene limited edition. Unique events. People love to go to unique events that they can't get anywhere else. Autographed works. We know how that works. The third thing is offering connections, and this is probably the most important part. If you engage with your fans, if you tell origin stories, if you ask for their input, if you do crowdfunding, if you show off any art made by your fans, if you see the fans, they are connected to you, they become loyal, and you've got them for life. So connecting with your fans is a huge part of this. Okay, so quick case study. I made these coffee mugs that say make some art. I got 108 of them for my grand opening. I launched my book. My book had 108 stories, and I had 108 coffee mugs. So I labeled them, and as a way of paying homage to the 5 most influential people, I took the first 5, set them aside, and explained why they were important. The first 2, number 1 and number 2, were dedicated to my mother and father, because without them, I would never have gotten to the point that I was. So I took those 2 mugs and I said, you know, they've both died. So to remember them, and also as a way of saying that nobody knows what happens after you die, I put them in a blanket, I wrapped the blanket over it, and I broke both of them. And then I said, nobody gets to see what happens after you die. So I threw away the pieces without even looking at them. That's what I mean about forming a connection, creating something that's limited. And people were happy to purchase these mugs as a remembrance, as a souvenir of that moment in time. 16 hours later is another moment where I was a wedding officiant. 2 of my friends got married. I married them together. And then the next day, I was looking at this amazing mountain outside my room in Colorado, and I had my photographic equipment, and I figured I'd like to timestamp this. So I did. I took a picture of this, and I wondered what they were doing at that moment in time. 16 hours after they got married. It was their first morning as a couple. And so that's why I called this piece 16 Hours Later. This piece was the beginning of my art career, I would say officially, because it was taken right at the beginning of the pandemic. Nobody in America really knew what was going to happen. I was just on the brink of starting my art company, so I really didn't know what was going to happen. So that was kind of like a birth it was gestating. And my mother her health was failing. So all 3 of these events over the next 12 months would totally transform my life. The pandemic would happen, my company would be created, and my mother would die. So when I look back at these docks, and these Quincy docks in downtown Port Townsend, I can't help but think how innocent I really was, and how innocent we all were at one point in our lives. So that's why I call this the Innocent Docks. So that's me, that's my business. Like I said before, I firmly believe that empty walls are sad walls. So if you see your walls and you would like to put something on them, just think about printing some art and getting some art on those walls. I'm doing a crowdfunding campaign in 2025. It's pretty big. It's teaching people how to make photographs and turn it into art. So if that sounds interesting to you, you should definitely keep in touch with me, because it's going to be a big one. You know, I love my stuff, obviously. Maybe it's something for you too, maybe not. But if you would like to learn more, you can always get on my newsletter by going to rosspruden.art/connect. And I try to post about once a week. I'm not always successful, but I try. Okay, so that's the end of this lecture. And if there's one thing that I really hope that you do, it's that you go off and you make your own art. That's why I have Make Some Art.